Mixtape Podcast.
Yeah, what it do? Mobbing with the crew, nothing new. I thought you knew, thought I was falling off. Blessings keep on falling through. Oh, don't panic, dog. Bro, wait, boo, I can't lose. No, I can't lose.
Yo, what's good, y'all? I am Jah So Focused, here to welcome you to the Knicks Take Podcast. This is episode 89, and this is a weekly podcast where we bring you the biggest Knicks news of the week. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter X by searching for the Knicks Take. Also, be sure to check us out on our website, knickstake.com. And last, if you love what you hear, please subscribe to us on whatever platform you are watching or listening to us on. Hit that thumbs up button and the notification bell if you're watching us on YouTube. But most importantly, please share with your fellow Knicks fans, Knicks family who might enjoy the show.
Mixtape Podcast.
Yeah, what it do? Mobbing with the crew, nothing new. I thought you knew, thought I was falling off. Blessings keep on falling. Oh, don't panic, dog. Bro, wait, boo, I can't lose.
He stabilized this franchise.
No,
and
what it
he's
do?
kinda transformed.
Mobbing with the crew, nothing new. I thought you knew, thought I was falling off. Blessings keep on falling. Oh, don't panic, dog. Bro, wait, boo, I can't lose. No, I can't lose.
I think I might have done that better than my brother in every episode of the Knicks Take Podcast. I'm going to have to listen back and see. But thank you guys for watching the Knicks Take Podcast, listening to the Knicks Take Podcast. As you guys can clearly see, it is me running solo today. My brother French, the bro host, feeling a little under the weather. He was a game time decision, and game time came, and he didn't show up. So you got me today. It's going to be a short episode. We always make these predictions and we're never right. But since it's just me and I have no one to argue with today, and the games this week, as you'll come to see, don't really give us a lot to talk about. We're going to go over games 4, 5, and 6 of the Indiana Pacers, New York Knicks, Eastern Conference semifinals round of the playoffs. And after that, we're going to talk about, okay, what's next? What's potentially next? And, you know, what we may be talking about next week, what my predictions are, we'll be talking about next week. Starting with game 4. Oh, I don't know if any of you guys cared, but I had a decent week. Usually we talk about that. Game 4 of the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs. Knicks went to the Gainbridge Fieldhouse Sunday, May 12th, 2024. I'm going to breeze through this one. No OG Anunoby due to the hamstring issues that we talked about in game 3. There was still no timetable for his return at that point. We had Precious Achiuwa, who started the playoffs out of the rotation and now is starting games. That goes to show the lack of health for the New York Knicks. We had him starting at the 4 spot where Julius Randle was supposed to start, where OG Anunoby was starting. And now we have Precious Achiuwa starting there at the 4. And this was all Pacers all the way. The Knicks went down by 20 to end the first quarter and never got within 15 points for the remainder of the game. Knicks got blown out 89 to 121. Not really much to say about that one. I usually will give you some kind of the highlights. We give you the, something to maybe, chew on a little bit, think about the game, but there's really nothing to chew on. Knicks came out flat. Knicks came out with no energy. Like I said, 89 to 121 was the final score. Game that did not look anything like the type of game that we've come to expect from the New York Knicks. Anything like the games we've come to appreciate from the New York Knicks. They came out looking flat. They came out looking tired. They didn't get any 50-50 balls. They didn't get any rebounds. They couldn't get the shots over the rim. Every shot that went up, whether it didn't matter who was shooting it, Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, didn't matter who was putting them up. They were hitting the front of the rim and clanking off, and it couldn't get it over the hoop, which is a sign that everyone was tired. To me, it looked like everyone was tired. They were getting the shots that they wanted, and they were just hitting the front of the rim. They were clanking on the side, and there wasn't enough oomph. Yeah, it's not really much for me to say about this one, really. I'll give you guys Josh Hart played 23 minutes, only scored 2 points, was 1 for 6 from the field. Precious Achiuwa, 24 minutes, he had 8 points. Isaiah Hartenstein, 4 points, 4 points, 5 rebounds in 20 minutes. A decent rebounding rate considering he only played 20 minutes, but then you get to Dante DiVincenzo, who was 3 for 13. He had 7 points. Jalen Brunson, 18 points, 6 for 17 from the field. Just nobody really played well. Miles McBride got 32 minutes in the game, 6 for 17, 16 points in the game. The only guy who got to the 20-point marker was one Alec Burks, who got some serious burn and looked like he could be a contributing factor for the New York Knicks coming off of the bench, which would be key if the Knicks wanted to take advantage and maybe get back in the lead for this first round series. So let's move on to game 5 in the Garden, Tuesday, May 14th, a game that was super important for both of these teams, both for the Indiana Pacers and for the New York Knicks. Important for the Indiana Pacers in that if you can steal a game in the Garden, then you get to come back home and you get to try and put away the New York Knicks. You don't have to worry about a Game 7 situation in Madison Square Garden. You don't have to worry about home court advantage because then you've taken home court advantage. They did what they were supposed to do. They held serve. They were supposed to win both of their games at home. The only way that the Indiana Pacers were ever going to win this series was by taking a game in the Garden. New York Knicks needed this win. Already down OG. Already down Julius Randle. Already down Mitchell Robinson. Already down Bojan Bogdanovic. They needed to steal. They needed to get a win wherever they could. Right at this point, 2-2 series after that blowout in Game 4. You need a win. You need a win. You need to take advantage of the situation as it is. And you don't want to come home. You don't want to get to the second round for the second straight year and not make it a 7-game series when you have home court advantage. You have to make it a 7-game series if possible. So you need Game 5 in order to do that. And if you can't do it in Game 5, then you're talking about going to Indiana and stealing one there, and that's always hard to do. So what happens? What adjustments did Coach Tom Thibodeau make? Well, he got Precious Achiuwa out of that starting lineup, and he put in a Deuce McBride. If you guys remember, in some of the earlier podcasts during the playoffs, I was saying, hey, man, Dante DiVincenzo, I've been thinking about maybe Deuce McBride, maybe taking his minutes. And to start the series, Dante DiVincenzo and Deuce McBride himself started making me kind of eat my words. And this time we get to see what it looks like with both of them on the court. Not for the first time. We've seen that lineup with Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, and Deuce McBride alongside Josh Hart and Isaiah Hartenstein. We've seen that lineup in the regular season, and that lineup actually played pretty well. The record, more on 500 side. I think they might have had one more win than losses in that stretch where those guys started together. But I liked what I saw. They had a win over the Golden State Warriors with that lineup. They had a couple of good wins with that lineup, and I was excited to see it. I'd never really advocated for the Precious Achiuwa as the starter, mainly because when you're talking about having Josh Hart as a three-point shooter, and then you have Precious Achiuwa, who's not a three-point shooter. You have Isaiah Hartenstein, who's not a three-point shooter. The spacing in the paint gets a little clogged. It makes things a little bit more difficult for Jalen Brunson, who's already having to shoulder an incredible load. He's already having to deal with full court pressure whenever he's bringing the ball up. He's already having to deal with double and triple teams when he's in the half court. And now you're making it more difficult for him by having Precious Achiuwa on the court. Well, Deuce McBride starts. You don't have to deal with that. And after figuring it out for a little bit, the Knicks ended up going up by 5 to end the first. Deuce McBride and Jalen Brunson punished the Pacers on guard-to-guard screens. Every time Deuce McBride tried to set a screen for Jalen Brunson, either Jalen Brunson would expose the poor defense or he would pass it to Deuce, who would needle in a three-point shot and just utterly punish the Pacers' decision-making on those screens, on those decisions. They had Deuce on Tyrese Halliburton. And, both of them just kind of exposed his inability to defend. Also, Isaiah Hartenstein on the glass was just masterful. By the end of halftime, at halftime, he had 7 offensive rebounds. 7 offensive rebounds. And it's not even a full game. It's halftime. He ended up having, I think he ended up having more offensive rebounds than the entire Indiana Pacer team did at the end of the game. So at halftime, the Knicks were up big. Pacers put forth some effort to try and cut the lead 2-7. Actually, they didn't put forth effort. They did cut the lead 2-7 after 3 straight Miles Turner threes. And at this point in the game, I'm kind of watching and I'm like, Jesus Christ, can you guys just put these guys away the way they put you away in the game before? Like, all I've been asking for all playoffs is for the Knicks to have an advantage and keep it. And to not play with their food, not let it get to a close game, stop giving us heartburn and heart palpitations and having us clutching our pearls at the end of games because it's a close game and you never know what's going to happen. If there's going to be a fluke shot that you lose the game to, just put these guys away, man. Just put them away. That's what I was been asking for all season. Knicks call timeout after those 3 straight Miles Turner threes to cut it to 7. And come back out composed, come back out ready to play, come back out, and just rebound the basketball the way that they have all game. They had all game, the way that we've known them to do all season. Even though they're missing Mitchell Robinson, even though they are missing OG Anunoby, even though they're missing Julius Randle, 3 taller guys who have been known to get rebounds from time to time, that in particular to OG Anunoby and Julius Randle, who was always threatening for triple doubles with points, rebounds, and assists. You're missing those guys. Doesn't matter. You got Isaiah Hartenstein. You got Josh Hart out rebounding everybody, even though he's 6'4", and Pacers just couldn't match up. Right, the Garden came out, gave the guys the boost of energy that they needed. Jalen Brunson was cooking, and yeah. At the end of the day, they did what I've been begging for all playoff series or all playoff season, and that is take over, put the foot on their neck, and never let up until the final buzzer sounded. 121-91. The Knicks exact revenge and get a 30-point victory over the Indiana Pacers. Jalen Brunson scored 44 points, had 7 assists, 7 dimes for another historic performance. At the end of that game, Jalen Brunson was leading all playoff performers in points per game. He had the most points per game in the NBA in the playoffs. He had the most points through 11 games outside of guys named Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and there was another name there, but he once again, Jalen Brunson is doing historic things. He's doing things that, puts him in the likes of the guys who we call the greatest of all time, right? We see the LeBron, Michael Jordan debates and all that stuff, and Jalen Brunson is having a playoff performance that is eschewing what those guys did in their careers. And we're not going to put him up there with those guys unless he continues to do this for another 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. But Think about all of the great performance. KD hasn't done this. Kevin Durant hasn't done this. Dirk Nowitzki hasn't done this. Carmelo Anthony hasn't done what Jalen Brunson has done in these playoffs, and he's doing it without help. He's doing it without a number two, a solid number two. You gotta just. If you guys don't appreciate it now, you're never going to appreciate what Jalen Brunson has done for us, not just in the regular season, but definitely during this playoff period. Isaiah Hartenstein was the biggest Knicks presence on the floor with a commanding 17 rebounds on top of 5 assists for the night. And Josh Hart finished with a double-double, had 18 and 11. But most importantly, Deuce McBride made the most of his start. Deuce McBride was... You could say he was the key to this matchup because the Indiana Pacers didn't have really any answers in this game for what to do with Deuce McBride. Deuce McBride ended up finishing the game. Oh, that is his third quarter. Excuse me. Deuce McBride ended up finishing this game 7 for 15 from the field for 17 points, 3 for 7 from 3. For a 43% 3-point field goal percentage. He had 4 assists on the night. He had a masterful game. Knicks don't win this game without Deuce McBride's performance. And he outperformed Dante DiVincenzo. Dante DiVincenzo didn't really have a great night. He was 4 for 14, 28% from the field, 8 points. And it didn't matter, right? You think that the Knicks are going to blow out these Pacers they're gonna blow him out because Dante DiVincenzo's going off from 3. A thing that we haven't seen. We've seen him shoot 15 threes in a game. Have seen him shoot 20 threes in a game. We haven't seen that Dante DiVincenzo, the guy who was basically holding down the fort when Julius Randle first went down. And it's okay because we got guys coming into the rotation, got guys on the bench, we got guys who were never supposed to be starters starting, and they're filling their role as starters for the New York Knicks. All right. Like I said, I'm breezing through these games. There's not too much to talk about. Game 4, blowout. Game 5, blowout. Now we're going to Game 6 in Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. Me and a lot of you, I'm sure, came into this game understanding, listen, we're down. We're down, guys. You guys need to come in and take Game 6, right? You need to come in Game 6. Don't take it to a Game 7. Take advantage of the opportunity that has been given to you. As a result of what happened on the West Coast, where Denver and Minnesota, their series has gone to Game 7. The Knicks had an opportunity in Game 6. If they come out with a win, now you don't have to play until Tuesday. That's a 4-day rest period. You can try and get OG Anunoby right. You can try and get Jalen Brunson right. You can come into an Eastern Conference Finals round as healthy as you possibly can be. All of the benefits are there for the New York Knicks. You found the solution to, okay, how can we get Jalen Brunson going? How can we sustain offense and be good defensively against this Indiana Pacers team whose offense is just outstanding, missing Julius Randle, missing OG Anunoby, missing Mitchell Robinson. And I want to say that this game was frustrating. Not because this was like Game 4. This was the closest game out of the 3 that we're going to talk about in on this episode of the Knicks Take podcast. This game was frustrating because to start the game, which started with the same starting lineup that we had in the previous game with Deuce McBride out there with Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, and Isaiah Hartenstein. It started, and you watch within the first minutes of the first quarter, Josh Hart begins to hold on to his ab area, hold on to his stomach area. And as the game progresses, you see that he's still paying attention and he's keeled over and he's grimacing and he's asking out of the game. So this is the most frustrating aspect of this game, is that once again, someone on the New York Knicks is ailing. And it's none other than the guy who we've relied on to play full games. He's played like 3 straight 48-minute games in the playoffs. He's a guy who is our energy guy, a guy who you need like in a series where energy is at a minimum by the end of the 4 quarters, because they're running back and forth so much and there's so much fast breaks and there's so much happening. You have to exert energy throughout all 48 minutes. And the team that has the most energy and the team that's going after the most loose balls and the team that's doing the most is the team that's going to win. We have an energy guy in Josh Hart. Our energy guy, Josh Hart, is ailing and he can't get to those 50-50 balls. He can't get to those rebounds. He can't do the things that is going to be needed to win the game, win the series and win the game. So he's hurt, but he's on the court. And the Knicks and the Pacers, they go back and forth through the first quarter and a half. And through this quarter and a half, and we'll say the whole entire first half, Jalen Brunson, the guy who, when it comes to, we need you, that's the guy who shows up. Last year against Miami, Game 6, he was the only one who showed up. When the Knicks needed a victory to avoid elimination, Jalen Brunson was the only offense that we had. Jalen Brunson was the only guy making shots. Jalen Brunson was going off for another one of his first historic performances as a New York Knicks playoff performer. And he didn't have it. He didn't have it to start this game. And even with that, it was still pretty close. And you had to feel good about that. The Knicks are in it. They had the lead at several points in the first quarter and a half against this Indiana Pacers team, and Jalen Brunson wasn't the reason for it. Deuce McBride actually was the leading scorer in the first quarter and a half for the New York Knicks, and he was punishing the Pacers. He ends up on this night with an 8 for 12 night for 66% from the field, 4 for 6 from 3, 20 points for the game, and it looks like, okay, if we can sustain this with JB not playing great, Deuce McBride fulfilling his role, this will be close. And I love the Knicks in a close game going into the fourth quarter. And then the Pacers go on a 17-2 run at the end of the second and go up by double digits. And it wasn't to the degree to where you had to worry, like, damn, the Knicks can't come back from this. Even at the end of the second quarter, Dante DiVincenzo hits a 3. And right after that, the Pacers come out and somebody, I think it's Andrew Nembhard, gets hit with a technical. 61-51 to end the half with a technical free throw that's going to be shot to start the third quarter, which would, if the Knicks make it, which that's up to that point, the Knicks were missing damn near every free throw that was in existence. And it looked like, okay, you guys are down in the rebounds, you're down in free throws, you guys aren't hitting your free throws, you're not a rebounding team. If you guys lose this game, those are going to be the main reasons why. And still, you're only down 10 with an opportunity to go down 9 when the third quarter begins with that technical free throw shot. The Knicks take advantage. They do hit that free throw shot. Jalen Brunson hits it. And then they have back-to-back scores. The Knicks cut it to 5. It's like, yes, this is what we were expecting. The third quarter comeback. The resilient Knicks. Down 4 guys. Down 4 rotation players. They're going to come back and they're going to make this a game going into the fourth quarter. But it wasn't meant to be, guys. It's the most disheartening half that we have seen in these playoffs. And it's not disheartening because the Knicks didn't show effort. They did. It's not disheartening because, because they lost, which they did lose 111 to 106, is disheartening because I've already listed the names to you that the Knicks are down. Josh Hart repeatedly asked out of this game. And when he asked out of this game in the third quarter for the final time, and the Knicks were down to like 20 points at that point, you start to see what's left. Okay, Jalen Brunson, okay, that's great. Dante DiVincenzo, who showed up in this game, 6 for 14. He didn't show up from three. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. He played very well from three also. He went 3 for 8 from three, 17 points. Deuce McBride, I already listed you his stats. He finished with 20. Deuce McBride ain't supposed to start, y'all. Deuce McBride is our, if we're fully healthy, he's our 8th man. If you think about it. Josh Hart supposed to come off the bench. He had a 2 for 8 night, finished with 5 points, playing 30 minutes. He asked out of this game and had 30 minutes and 45 seconds. This is how much we rely on Josh Hart. And he is our energy guy, and he's our glue guy, and he's our everything guy. And he didn't have it tonight, basically from damn near the opening tip. And he had to ask out of this game. He never returned with sore abs. You're disheartened because of Josh Hart. Because he's the one guy that you cannot lose in a playoff run. We missed Julius Randle, didn't matter. Missed OG Anunoby, got to win without him. Missed Mitchell Robinson. I've been there, done that. We've done that before, 2-1 without him. But in all those instances, Josh Hart was out there. Josh Hart was playing. Josh Hart was getting the rebounds that Julius Randle usually gets. Josh Hart was out there making the plays, next to Jalen Brunson that Julius Randle usually does. Josh Hart was out there getting the loose balls and the 50-50 balls. He was making up for the defensive acumen of an OG Anunoby, even though he's not the defender that OG is. Josh Hart is out there guarding those same guys that OG was and trying to hold his own. So when he comes out of the game in the third quarter and doesn't return in this game, not because the Knicks were getting blown out, but because he could not do it, that was the most disheartening thing out of all of it. Because now, we already have Deuce McBride, our 8th man, behind Josh Hart, behind Mitchell Robinson, behind, you could say Bojan is right there too. Right? So he's either our 8th or our 9th. He's starting. Josh Hart is supposed to be a starter. Is not supposed to be a starter. Josh Hart was starting. Now who are we going to start? Jalen Brunson, Deuce McBride, Dante DiVincenzo, Precious Achiuwa? Listen, I love Precious, but if Precious starts Game 7, it's going to be a very big problem for the New York Knicks. And that is the most disheartening part about all this. Because you don't know how bad this injury is to Josh Hart. You could see it on the court. He wasn't getting to those 50-50 balls. He wasn't getting those rebounds. He wasn't able to put the oomph. Everything you do as an athlete is built around your core. And he has a core injury. You can't make that up. You can't make up his rebounding. You can't make up the energy that he brings. Everybody has to do it together, which we've said all season. But at some point, as I've told to my brother French, at some point, there is a comeuppance. There is a point where everybody cannot make up. The remainder cannot make up for what is lost. So this was a disheartening loss. Knicks lose. Knicks lose to Indiana 116 to 103. In a game that the Knicks could have come back and won. And I feel like if we had 100% Josh Hart, we would have at least been in the game at the end of the game. A lot of the loose balls, a lot of the 50-50 balls, a lot of the rebounds, a lot of that stuff, the Knicks just didn't have enough to get those. And partially, I feel like Jalen Brunson, I don't know if he was ailing in this game. I don't know if his foot was bothering him. I don't know if he was like, listen, I'm going to only put up so much energy because I need to leave energy in case this goes to game 7. I thought his processing in the first half was a little slow, and Indiana took advantage of that. There were times where I felt like he could have passed the ball, and he waited for a beat, and the Pacers were able to adjust. They were able to get turnovers off of him, and were able to just take over. And I don't know what else to say about this game other than it was really disheartening because of the Josh Hart factor of it all. So after the game, Josh Hart was not available for media. He was probably getting treatment. Everyone assumes Josh Hart will play. I assume Josh Hart will play. I did watch, I think we talked about Dr. Sutterer on this podcast before, who does videos analyzing player injuries. And it was his opinion that Josh Hart definitely probably should not play if there is a bleed in his abdomen. And if that's the case, I'm still expecting him to play. But if he plays, there's a chance that he will further injure his abs. And if that's the case, then we probably should not expect a great Josh Hart game in Game 7. Doesn't mean that the Knicks can't win. I want to be very clear. As disheartening as this injury is, as disheartening as this loss is, I'm not expecting OG Anunoby to play. If Josh Hart does play and he can't give 100%, it's not a great look for the Knicks. Dante DiVincenzo will have to have a better game than he did in Game 6. He will have to go out and score 30-plus points. Jalen Brunson is going to have to score 40-plus, 50 points. Deuce McBride is going to have to repeat what he did, scoring 20 points. Isaiah Hartenstein is going to have to do a much better job on the boards than he did in Game 6, only finishing with 7 rebounds, 3 of which were offensive. He did not make himself a force in the game on this night. And we're going to need Isaiah Hartenstein to be that beast that we've seen him be. There was a point in time in this series where you could basically guarantee a double-digit Isaiah Hartenstein rebounding night. And he hasn't had many of those in this playoffs, and we're going to need him to have one in Game 7. We're going to need him to pass the ball as effectively as he had all season. He had a 6-assist night. That was great, but we need him to have the rebounds. Knicks lose every game that they cannot win the rebound battle. They win every game where they win the rebound battle. There is no choice. In Game 7, in the Garden, in Madison Square Garden, the New York Knicks have to win the rebound battle, and the Knicks have to score at a great clip in order to get out of this round and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in over 20 years. Knicks have not made it to the Eastern Conference Finals since the 99 season, since they were the 8th seed and made it all the way to the finals in that NBA shortened regular season shortened season. The Knicks just need to. They need to find that will. They need to find everything. Even with Josh Hart, even if he plays and he's not a shell, he's a shell of himself. He's not the same guy that we've known him to be. Those guys need to step up. Tomorrow, Sunday at 3:30 in the Garden, these guys need to show up and they need to do what it is that every time we count them out, every time we think they're not going to win, they don't have enough, they show us that they do. And we need to see it one last time. We need to see it one last time so that the Knicks can do what everybody said that they couldn't do, what everybody who believes that they are flukes, like Draymond Green said, like Paul Pierce keeps insinuating, like all of these guys who haven't watched this team. They need to go out and show it. They're missing 4 guys. They're missing Bojan. They're missing Mitch. They're missing OG. They're missing Julius Randle. No other team can sustain that kind of level of deterioration to their roster and have a chance to make it to the conference finals. This team does because of Jalen Brunson and because of the heart of the rest of this team and because of their coach. So that's it. That's all we've got. My prediction for Game 7, the Knicks are going to do that. The Knicks are going to come out. They're going to defy the odds. They're going to do what everybody says they couldn't do. They're going to show that this Indiana Pacers team is not as good as them, missing 4 guys. And that's not going to be a great look for Indiana. But this Knicks team just keeps coming up with ways to win. And I expect them to do that on Game 7. And if not, I don't think it will be a reason for any Knicks fan to be upset about, any Knicks fan to be crying about. But we'll talk about that next week. Yeah, so without further ado, I'd like to bid you adieu. Thank you for listening to the Knicks Take Podcast. Peace.
The Knicks Take Podcast.
Yeah, what it do? Mobbing with the crew, nothing new. I thought you knew, thought I was falling off. Blessings keep on falling through. Oh, don't panic, dog. Bro, boo, I can't lose. No, I can't lose.